right. So we take care of business and no turnovers. So that's important. A lot of rain. The conditions were there, even though we kind of had a turnover on the botched field goal, but that really wasn't a turnover. So overall, it was a good first game for Mike White because this is exactly, and maybe this was the reason why. Because I was wondering, why don't you give Zach? Because it was unfair to Zach in a way that you had him go up against the Patriots defense twice, the Bills defense. You had to go up against Denver's defense. And we can go down the line of all the defenses that he played when he was playing. He didn't get an opportunity. Let's just put it this way: to play a Bear defense. But on the other hand, it was good that if you were going to make the move, do make it now because you give Mike White the opportunity to go up against the Bear defense, and it's sort of like almost like a preseason kind of game for him. Like, okay, let's get your feet wet. Best way to do that against a team like the Bears. So I think that went well. I thought there were a couple of shaky passes that Mike threw that I think we were lucky that weren't turnovers. But look, Mike White is not the second coming. Let's not go crazy about that. What's important is that, again, like we said last week, take care of business against the teams you're supposed to take care of business against. And that has two more on the schedule, Detroit and Jacksonville. Take care of business against those two teams. The Jets have 9 wins. Now, I don't know if 9 wins. Matter of fact, I'd have to say 9 wins in this AFC may not get it to the postseason. But you're not supposed to go winless against those other teams, including our next opponent, the Minnesota Vikings. Very, very big that the Vikings beat the Patriots. The worst thing you want to have happen is the Vikings to lose to the Patriots, and then the Jets go to Minnesota, and the Minnesota Vikings beat the Jets. That would have been just a bad scenario, and one that would have been very dangerous to their playoff hopes. Didn't happen. Patriots lose, Vikings beat them. Now we get the opportunity to go into Minnesota and hopefully win one there. We're going to be the underdog. They've only lost 2 games all season, so that'll be a good test for Mike White and this team. Again, the schedule is completely there in the second half of the season. Take care of business with the games you're supposed to. Go 500 with the rest of the games, you're in the postseason. That's as simple as it's going to be math-wise. Doesn't always work out that way. You may get upset, and that might be ugly, but we'll worry about that next week. I don't know what was going on at running back. Again, this is what happens when you watch in this scenario, just condensed games. It's just, I have no idea, A, why Robinson wasn't playing. B, I have no idea why Michael Carter didn't run the ball much. So I certainly hope Michael Carter's healthy. But C, what in the world? Why? We saw Bam Knight play in the preseason. And everybody was stoked. Wow, look at Bam Knight. This guy's really playing well. This is going to be a good player. This is going to be a guy that should make the football team. We got to find a way to get this guy. Maybe, of course, because he's done a good job in the return game. He did a really good job in the return game in college. Perfect way for him to make the team. He didn't. Okay? He's on the practice squad. All right, I guess something I didn't like about him. He gets an opportunity to play, and he looks like the guy we saw in the preseason. So the question is, why did we trade for James Robinson when we had this guy? I don't understand. I mean, why don't you just play Bam Knight the next week, see how he played, and then make the trade for James Robinson if you didn't feel comfortable with Bam? So I don't know. And you know what? It's very possible that Bam Knight's playing because I guess James Robinson is hurt. So what you're saying, I don't know. I haven't heard anything. That's the only thing I can come up with. We'll all find, I mean, you guys know before I do because you've watched the game and you've heard everything, but I haven't. So we'll see how that goes, but that's a good thing. It's a good thing. That's another good young player added to the roster. I see no reason now how Bam Knight goes back to the practice squad because you can't do that. Well, I mean, you just can't. Anybody who seems Bam Knight play like this now at this stage of the season, why wouldn't you pick him up? Why wouldn't you steal him off the practice squad? So the Jets are not going to be able to put this guy back on the practice squad. They can reserve a couple of guys, hold a couple of guys. He would be it, but still, I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. Still, nice to see. Nice to see the backup running backs doing a good job. Great to see Elijah Moore coming up big, and that was really the thing that was, you were wondering about with what's going on with Elijah. Well, I guess we've got our answer, and that's unfortunate, but this is a learning process for Zach, and I hope he's going to get better. Coach believes he's going to get better. I believe the coach. But while Zach gets better on the sidelines and he learns the game, we get the opportunity to watch a more experienced and a better player at this stage of his career play. And that's why the switch to Mike White was important. Because I've talked about this for years in all sorts of different sports. You cannot punish the rest of your team, especially in a football team, college or pro. You cannot punish that football team when you are grooming and giving experience to a quarterback. It's sort of like same thing like at hockey with a goalie. I don't know, but football is the best example at quarterback. When you have a good team and everybody's playing well, and the only reason that your team is not playing better is because, well, yeah, I'm just giving our quarterback some experience. There comes a point when that's just not right. And if the Jets were a 3-win football team going into this week, Zach Wilson would have been the quarterback in this game. But we're at the stage where it's just not fair to the rest of the team. Because keep this in mind too. It's the only position on the roster besides kicker. It's the only position where you don't have anybody else that's out there with you, basically. It's like saying, well, I've got this rookie tight end that's a first-round pick. So, I can still play him because I got a couple other veterans. Same thing on the offensive line. Well, I can still play him. I got 4 other guys. I could still play the rookie receiver. I got 2 or 3 other guys. So my point is that, but the quarterback position, that's the one spot where the reason I bring it up is because it's not fair to Zach in a way or any of the quarterbacks in that position. Because normally other players of his equal would be playing other positions. They'd be learning on the job. But you're the only guy out there. And when you're not ready and the Jets are a winning football team and the playoffs are right, you can see it. And you're not going to screw your playoff opportunity while you're grooming your quarterback and giving him time to become a good quarterback, because we have seen quarterbacks before that have sat the bench and have learned on the bench and have been just fine. And just because they're on the bench, and I know I heard these questions from the reporters earlier this week about, well, have you ever seen a situation before where you benched a young quarterback at this point in their career and then he came back and he played well? This is a different time, okay? Because as we've talked about before, you didn't have to rush these quarterbacks in 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. You didn't have to do it. You have to rush these quarterbacks when they're high, top 5, top 10 quarterbacks, unless you have a superstar at number 1, and sort of like, for 1 year with Alex Smith in Kansas City because they're trying to win the playoffs and they got a veteran or whatever. But in this situation, or most situations, when you're drafting a quarterback in the top 5, top 10, it's because you don't have a really good football team. So, all right, let's throw him out there, and we only have 5 years before his contract runs out, and we have to know whether or not we're going to give him a big contract. That just never used to be the case. So you don't want to be put in a situation where you sit him a year or two, and then let's say you play him the first year, the third year, and he plays okay, but then by the 4th year, he's like, hey, you know what? He's pretty good. But before you even go into the 5th year, is he really good? See what I'm saying? So you've already kind of exhausted a few years, and then his first couple of years trying to get used to playing the game, because it shouldn't be that quick and easy. It wasn't for Aaron Rodgers. He didn't just step on the field at his first year and become a superstar, but he sat a little bit longer than most quarterbacks do. He's a perfect example. If Aaron Rodgers was drafted when Zach was drafted, there's no way they can sit him for whatever he was sitting for, several years. You just can't do that. So that's just the way that the game is played nowadays. So I don't think you can come up with an example, the reporter coming up with an example of how it wasn't done, and you don't know of a situation where that guy and he worked out. It's not the case. And that's why Coach said what he said as far as, hey, Zach will be back. This year, Zach will be back. And I know, and I think you know, that if Mike White plays well, Zach is not coming back. But that's okay, because this is almost like he's telling the reporter, Zach will be back. Just get off my back. And then we'll worry about that later, because if Zach doesn't come back, that's because Mike White's playing well and the team is playing well. So if a reporter comes up and says, yeah, but I thought you said Zach would be back, Coach can say anything you want. He could say, well, things changed. And then you move on, and you can move on. You know why? Because it had been 3, 4, 5 weeks now since, say, Zach was benched. It's an old story now. Now you're a winning team. You're, say, a playoff caliber team. Maybe you are a playoff team at this point. Nobody's going to be talking about that. Nobody's going to have like 6, 7, 8, 9 questions about Zach. That's like, people are going to forget about that. They're going to go, okay, that's a story for the offseason. Because as long as the Jets are playing well, and as long as they're a playoff team, that's just a backstory. That's something that we're going to get you for in the offseason, and we're going to hammer away at you regarding Zach Wilson when the season's finally over. So that's why Coach said what he said. Just push it down the block at another time when it really won't be such a big story anymore. But that's what we all hope. Unless, of course, Mike gets hurt. But that's what we hope. We hope that, and it will be interesting if in a couple of weeks, even if Mike is playing well, I wonder if Zach becomes the number 2. That's going to be interesting. Because in my mind, Zach will become number 2 only when the team believes in Zach, that he could actually play well enough, and maybe even just as well as Joe Flacco, in case there was an injury. Because obviously right now that's not the case. And there's no way Zach should be out on the field as a number 2 in the next couple of weeks. But give it a month. I'd say a good month. That's more than enough. That's enough of a little window time where I think you can go, all right, it's interesting if Zach is number 2 yet. And if he's not number 2, I think that's a negative. But again, a story maybe for the offseason. I certainly hope so, because it's all about this season. And that's a really good win for the Jets. It was a little shaky early on, but they did what they did. The defense did not give up any ridiculous big plays. No stupid penalties, anything like that. Zerline made another nice kick. Garrett is again becoming a superstar. Nice to see Elijah in the picture. Corey now on the field as well. Looks like we got another good young running back to keep an eye on. All's good as we thought it could be after this ugly week regarding Zach Wilson. So next week, it gets tougher. It gets tougher for the next couple of weeks. But next week, it's the Minnesota Vikings. Looking forward to that one. Don't forget, again, please subscribe to the channel. You can also use the thanks icon on the bottom of the screen. Donate to the channel. All of those donations help tremendously because it helps us to keep producing the types of shows and the programs that we want to. It ups our game, and that's all what this is about. This is full-time for me. I'm not a part-time guy. I don't work full-time doing something else. I put all my time and effort into this channel, and I certainly hope that you enjoy it. And I can't wait to keep doing it, and I can't wait to keep doing these Jet reaction videos because so far we've been winning, and we're getting closer and closer to sniffing those playoffs. And wow. I can't even think about it right now because the excitement level, all you have to do is turn on like a playoff game right now, like a playoff game from last year even. Just turn on like a wild card game from last year, any game, and just soak that in just for a minute or two and go, wow, look how awesome this is going to be if we can get in the wild card this year. How freaking awesome would that be? So I don't want to go, but we're getting there. See you next week.